Bueno, sí.
Hola, Pixelatl, ¿cómo están? ¿Bien? A ver, más fuerte, están medio dormidos, más fuerte. ¿Cómo están, Pixelatl? Eso. Muy bien. Oigan, nada más les quiero dar un anuncio rápido. La clase de art va a ser en inglés, así que allá atrás tenemos traductores. Si alguno necesita la traducción, solo con una identificación. Y pues nada, para nosotros es un gusto presentar a Hernández, un creador con una trayectoria de 25 años que se dice fácil, pero es toda una vida. Así que les pido un gran aplauso para Art.
Les tengo que pedir disculpas, porque va a ser todo en inglés. Por la falta de práctica, desafortunadamente, pero como decía mi abuelita, por burro. Pero les voy a pedir un favor, que me saluden para ponerlo en video. All right, here we go. This is the largest group I've ever spoken in front of, so you'll have to forgive me if I get a little emotional. This is crazy. Here we go. It's weird that it says 25 years in Hollywood because I don't feel very Hollywood. It's probably better stated that it's 25 years in animation. And actually, it's more like 28. And I have all the gray hair to prove it. So here we go, we're gonna wing it. What I wanna do is I wanna take you kind of through my journey. And what I'm hoping is that what I share with you, you'll be able to take forward in your own careers. It's the things that I've learned along the way. And the things that I wish my younger self 28 years ago would have known. I'm gonna age myself here. I started in this business at a time when there was no internet. So I didn't have the benefit of getting onto the web and looking up information. You all have that now, and use that to your advantage, which is indispensable. So here we go. So that's 7-year-old me. And that's 7-year-old me's drawing. Animation is the only thing I have ever wanted to do. It is absolutely the most important thing to me. It is my identity. And hello. There it is. Okay. It's my identity. It's who I am. I wouldn't want to do anything else because I don't know what else I would do. And I'm sure that it's the same for all of you. And so I would encourage you, no matter what, that at the end of this, if you find any kind of inspiration from this, that you hang on to it, and hopefully it will drive you. So this was my first movie, the first thing I worked on, back at a time before CG animation. So I was very fortunate in that I started at a time when 2D animation was still on the rise, when there was still a lot of work. And so at the age of 20, I got my first job because it was a little easier to do so. So I remember after 12 weeks of intense figure drawing classes and assistant animation and just doing my best to just get in there and try to make a career of this, I had a whole new portfolio, and I submitted my portfolio, and I got lucky. 2 weeks after turning in my portfolio, Turner Feature Animation came calling and offered me a position to work on this movie. So without really knowing anything else about the industry, I was so nervous that day when I went to work for the first time after signing my contract. I was still living at home with my parents, and I remember very distinctly that morning driving to work, throwing up twice. I had to pull over and throw up because I was so nervous. When I got to the studio, I threw up again. When I came into the office, I looked so white that they offered for me to go home and rest and come back the next day. So, the one thing I do remember, though, very distinctly, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of you will be able to relate to, is how difficult it was for me to prove to my parents that I could make a living doing this. That is not easy, especially because my parents are a blue-collar family. They're blue-collar parents. My father was born in San Juan de los Lagos. He was raised there. He came to the US when he was 19. He spent the rest of his career painting buildings and just doing manual labor, and he didn't want the same for his children, especially for me because I'm the eldest. And the way that he saw it, if I set a bad example for the rest of the kids, it was gonna go bad. So when I told him that I was going to be an animator, that I wanted to do this for a living, he was pissed off. He was not happy. It wasn't until the day that I signed my contract for Cats Don't Dance. He came with me that day, again, because we lived, I lived under my parents' roof. We drove together. He went to work. I went to sign my contract. After that, I went over, I picked him up, and I drove home because he was really tired, and he asked to see the contract. Most of it doesn't make sense because it's all legal stuff. Then he got to the page where it showed how much I was going to be paid. And he had this little giggle, and it's a giggle that I still remember. And I said, because it was a nervous giggle, and I asked him, I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Nothing." He said, "It took me 22 years to make what you're starting at." And it was in that moment that he knew I was going to be okay, and I don't know that I've ever seen my father be that proud ever before. So it was great. So I spent 1 year on Cats Don't Dance. Ironically, 2 weeks after I started on this movie, Disney called. And they said, "It's okay, we will wait. As you get closer to ending, let us know, and we'll talk then." Then I got recruited. I went to Disney. There's Danny. I worked on Danny. My first movie, Fantasia 2000. Now, this was at a time when, again, it was all hand-drawn, so this was my first job at Disney, and I was an in-betweener. That's the lowest you could go in 2D animation. It was my job to just get in there and do all the in-betweens between all the other drawings, but I loved every minute of it. It was great. Then it was Hercules. Tarzan. Beauty and the Beast. Now this one's interesting. This movie came out the year that I graduated high school. It was being worked on while I was in high school, and the reason why I have a credit on this is because they added a song later on. And so they brought in a bunch of animators, they brought in a bunch of artists, and I was one of them, and I got to be a part of adding that song back in. So I have a credit on Beauty and the Beast when I probably shouldn't have. The Tigger movie. Atlantis. You have no idea how many people I work with that worked on that movie that would be so proud of hearing you guys cheer for that. So these are the characters I got to work on. So I worked on the sprite for Fantasia 2000. So not a lot of people know this. Every one of those lines had to be hand-drawn. And if those of you that are very familiar with 2D animation, you have to keep track of every one of those lines. So as we were drawing, we had to letter and number every one of them. Because if we missed one line from one drawing to the next, it would pop. So we had to keep track of all of them. On a good day, we could finish maybe 2 drawings in one day because they took so long. Donald, Duck, and Daisy. Pegasus. The Muses. The Apes. Kenai, Milo, Tigger, John Silver, Lucky Jack, and Rico. And then Disney decided that they were going to go to CG animation. And it all went away. So I had a choice. I had to decide what I was going to do with my career from that point forward, because I was so used to having a pencil in my hand, I didn't know what else to do. Disney had classes for us twice a week with Maya. Now, I applaud anyone that knows how to use that program, because I went home with a headache every single night. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, and it forced me to decide what it was that I really wanted to do. So I pivoted. I went in a different direction with my career, and it's the best thing that could have ever happened for me. I went to Disney Toon Studios. At Disney Toons, because it was a lot smaller, it was still Disney, but it gave me an opportunity to grow in a way that I would not have been able to grow at Disney Feature Animation. So there I worked on Bambi 2. Now, this is a special one for me, because when I started on this film, I was brought in for what was supposed to be a 2-week job. That kept me going for years. So I started working on their character designs. Most of them had already been done. The story had already been done. Most of the animation was done, and then they decided to add a song back into the movie. It was one that they had not storyboarded before, and all of the story crew was already gone working on other projects. So the director, Brian Pimentel, who I owe so much to, asked me if I wanted to storyboard the song. I had never storyboarded before, and that was very different, and I jumped at the chance. I said, hell yeah, I will do it. And from that point on, I stayed in story, and it was fantastic. So as a story artist, I worked on Brother Bear 2, the first Tinkerbell movie, the second Tinkerbell movie, Great Fairy Rescue, Secret of the Wings, Planes, and Planes, Fire, and Rescue. Fire and Rescue was where I became a story supervisor. And it's on Fire and Rescue that I decided I wanted to direct. That's when I decided I can do this. And it was mostly because I had gotten a chance to learn from so many really good directors. I also learned from a lot of bad directors, and we can go into that in just a little bit. And these are some of my storyboards. It used to freak out my nieces because they were little at the time. And the fact that I knew every one of their names, Rosetta, Iridessa, Silver Miss, Tink, all of them, it used to freak them out because there was no reason why a man my age should know all of the fairies. This is my favorite part. This is one of my most favorite storyboards I've ever worked on. So the entire moment when little Lizzie meets Tink and has her in her bedroom, those are all my boards. Those are all my sequence. In the script, all it said was, Lizzie brings Tink into her bedroom and they start to communicate. That was it. So I took inspiration from what was my favorite movie and the one that inspired me the most. It influenced me the most in my own storytelling, and that's E.T. So, after finishing on that one, Disney Toons decided to give me the opportunity to get my feet wet as a director. So they had me develop 3 different spin-offs, shorts, for the Planes franchise, and these were 3 of them. They never got made. They never got made because John Lasseter decided he was going to go in a different direction with the properties. So that was my first taste of developing a project almost to the point of starting production and then having it taken away. That's something that as a director happens a lot, and you have to get really used to it, and you pick yourself up and you move on, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a second. This was the last thing I did at Disney. They asked me to make my own little golden book. The same little books that I grew up with, and they said, do you want to illustrate the one for fire and rescue? And I jumped at the chance. So these are my illustrations. That's my favorite. And then I left Disney. After 18 years, I knew that if I wanted to be a director, I needed to leave. That was the hardest decision I've ever made in my career because I didn't know what was in the future. I didn't know where I was going to land, but I knew that if I was going to do this, I had to take that chance. The reason why I couldn't be a director at Disney was two parts. One, the line was too long. They had way too many people that were lined up to be a director, and all of them were waiting their turn. It was going to be years before I'd have that opportunity. The other thing, and it's by no coincidence, not to be salacious, but Disney had, at the time, never had a Latino as a director in feature films. And that was going to be an uphill battle. Thankfully, things have changed quite a bit. So my first stop was the Warner Animation Group. And with WAG, I worked on Smallfoot. The version of Smallfoot that I worked on, though, was one that is very different from what it was that it became. And that's because it was still very early. At the time, I was still working with Sergio Pablos, who was in Spain at the time. I was going to be based in Los Angeles, and we were going to work on it together. But the first thing we had to do was reboot the entire movie because it wasn't working. It also was a lot more difficult having a studio in Spain while we were working here in Los Angeles, because the studio didn't see a possibility of doing that. COVID has changed all of that. It means it has proven to the studios that we can work on different parts of the world, complete opposite sides, and still make a great movie. Is it ideal? No, but it can be done, and you can. And what's great is that it opened up so many opportunities for so much talent that we can now look for and tap into. So Smallfoot was so different that I had mariachis in it at one point. So after we rebooted that movie, I did my part and I left, and I moved on to another studio. I went to Sony Pictures Animation. When I joined Sony, the plan was for me to come on first and work on the star. So the idea was that I would help them in story while the studio and I would work together to find a project that would be my own to direct, which wasn't going to be easy, but it was fine. I was willing to kind of go for the ride. Here we go. These are some of my storyboards from the star. Now, the interesting thing about that is that I grew up Catholic, right? So I know the story of the Assumption, and everything that goes with that, right? But my goal as a story artist, as a storyteller, was to find the humanity in that moment, to not just storyboard what it is that we know from the Bible or anything like that, but to see Mary as an individual, as a person, as someone that has agency, as someone that has a choice to make, and to see her as a human, not just as someone that we revere. And so I had to approach it from that side, and it helped me in a really huge way with the storytelling. It made it feel more authentic. Especially the moment when Mary is arguing with Joseph about their journey to Bethlehem. The plan here was to not see them as Mary and Joseph, the iconic figures in history, but as to see them as a couple, and to make that argument feel authentic and real. So I had to kind of disassociate myself from the religion of it and see it just purely from the acting and the performance. So after finishing on the star, Sony decided that this would be my movie to direct. This is the story of Queen Esther. A story that is, for anyone else other than someone of the Jewish faith, isn't very familiar. It isn't very commonly known. Come to find out, this is what the festival of Purim is that the Jewish people celebrate. And so I had to do a deep dive into the Bible and figure out how to tell that story. So we went through 18 months of development on this. It was at a time when Sony wanted to do something that was more faith-based. And I wanted to make sure that it looked different, that it wasn't a house style. So even back then, even before Spider-Verse, Sony was already embracing the possibility of going with a different look, with a different style, not a house style. And this is the direction that we were hoping to take it. So this is by an artist named Joey Chu. Fantastic artist. So what ended up happening with this, after development, the Star didn't perform as well as it could have at the box office, and Sony decided that they were no longer going to do faith-based projects, so they killed it. This is a moment from it.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're enjoying
There's normally
yourself.
sound with this. Something must have happened.
Mrs. Corona, I need you to hide our shot.
So with this, even though we hadn't started yet, the plan was for me to do a proof of concept storyboard sequence where Hadass, the main character, is fleeing from some of the merchants because her dog has made a mess of the marketplace, and so she's trying to hide her dog first and then hide from the merchants. So she makes her way into a crowd, hiding from two of the merchants that are chasing after her. So she covers herself up with a shawl that she was actually planning to give back to these two. She thinks she stole it from her, tells her father, and he decides to go after her. She continues to hide through, not knowing what the crowd is there for. She pokes through to this parade that's happening. She gets out of the way. We see that he's still there looking for her, so are the merchants. She hears someone off screen going, "Who are you?" She dives back in. He can't find her. Come to find out, she's in one of the caravans.
What are you doing?
What she doesn't know is that all of the young women that are in each of these caravans are there to meet the prince for him to choose a new bride.
There goes our chance. I'm never gonna be queen.
So she decides, yeah, I'm in the wrong place. Sorry, I'm getting out. Nice to meet all of you. It stops, and this is our villain.
You're eager to stretch your legs, but we're not there.
He doesn't know that she doesn't belong there, so he tells her to get back in.
But... Oh... You see, I'm not...
Couldn't have gotten far. She ruined my special.
She sees them. She knows she has no way out. She's trapped.
not going anywhere.
So she quietly gets back into the caravan, and that's where her journey starts. She winds up in the palace and then tries to find her way out. But all of this was done in an effort to prove to the studio that we could make a movie out of this and it would be legitimately entertaining and hopefully relatable. And it was going to be called Morning Star. But again, didn't move forward. So yet another thing that just goes away. You get used to it. You get used to it because these projects are like rolling the dice. It's like a lottery. It's already a lottery to become, it's like winning the lottery to become a director. It's really winning the lottery if you can actually finish the movie all the way through. So I left Sony, and I went to Hasbro, which is super weird because I thought, well, this is Hasbro. It's a toy company. Why the hell do they want me? They had a film side of the company that does the Transformers and My Little Pony and all of these other movies that they work on, and they had that division. My job was to come in and help them on the new My Little Pony movie. So on this movie, I came on as kind of a mentoring director. We had two directors that were in Dublin, in Ireland. That's where they were animating the movie. And my job was to come in and help them, to help guide them. They were first-time directors. So it was a really great relationship in that way. Ultimately, I ended up being a producer on the movie. It was my first producing credit. Now, this is the special one. So this is a project that I spent 18 months developing. We had a full crew. We had story artists. We had visual development artists. We had an editor. We had an editorial team. We had a producer. We had everybody in place. We spent 18 months. This was a brand new property for Hasbro. Nothing had ever been done with it before. All they had was an idea. And my job was to take that idea and be creatively responsible for the entire property. I was going to be responsible for the movie, the series, the toys, the video games, the graphic novels, everything. But we were starting with a movie. And this is some of the artwork from it. The whole idea was that, just to give you an idea of it, was it's a specific planet, it's not Earth, it's covered in water, and the islands are made up of massive sea creatures and the people that live on those islands. we had a shark island, we had a jellyfish island. And every 5 or 6 years, every one of those islands gather at an octopus that rises from the ocean, and it has a stadium on it. And each one of those islands has one champion. They have one athlete to represent them in an Olympic-style game. And whoever wins the game ends up having resources. They win resources for their island for the next 5 or 6 years. This is Turtle Island, the smallest of the islands, or so they think, because all they see is the top of the turtle shell. Spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, when the turtle rises, they actually find out that it is the largest of the islands. We had so much artwork for this. Really unique worlds, and the art team was fantastic. They were really, really great. We even had a main character. We even had him modeled. And then E1 came in. Hasbro bought E1. E1 is an entertainment company. And so they decided, we're going to do toys. E1 will do entertainment. Now, E1 does Peppa Pig, they do PJ Masks, they do preschool stuff. They had never done a feature animated movie. And for them, this was too ambitious a project. And they killed it. I am hoping that one day it'll resurface. I don't know that it will, but I still share it with you anyway. So after that, I went back to WAG. So that's where I am now, as a director. On this. So after 20 years, after the Mike Myers live action version, we are jumping back in to make The Cat in the Hat fully animated and true to the book. The book is only that big. So it's myself and my directing partner, Erica Rivanoya, who I absolutely adore. She's a writer by trade, and she and I are working on this movie together. And our goal is to make it so that the book comes to life. So we are literally going into the book and finding inspiration from the style. It won't look like the Lorax. It won't look like Horton Hears a Who. It will look like the book, but it will be in CG, and that's our goal. We are still very early. We just got the green light. And so we're hoping that sometime in maybe late 2024, you will be able to see this movie. Now, here's one that I think will be very special to all of you, because it was special to me. They came to me with a character, and they said, we want to make a movie with this character, but we want to make sure that it is authentic. We want to make sure that we move away from the stereotypes and the things that have been done with this character before. So my job early on, when they came to me with this, I said, look, we all love Speedy. Como mexicanos, es uno de los personajes más importantes. ¿De México? De México. De Guadalajara. So my job was to prove to the executives that we could tell a story with authenticity that felt right, that we would not change this character because we didn't need to change this character, because he is not a racist character. He is not a classist character. If you think about Speedy, he is everybody's friend. He sees the good in everyone. He's the first one to help. He's the first one to raise his hand and say, I'm there for you. And that's the character that we are staying true to. What we are changing is the world around him. We are making sure that it feels like an authentic Mexico, that it feels like an authentic Guadalajara. Those are my dogs. So I'll leave that up there for everybody's pleasure while we talk about something else. So that was my journey. That's where I've been, that's what I've done, and that's, what I'm hoping is that I can talk to you a little bit about what I've learned. Because there's so many questions that I had when I was younger, and that I wish somebody had been able to tell me. And so I figured that's what we can start with right now. And then hopefully what we can do, which there should be enough time, is we can open it up to Q&A, and I can try to answer whatever I can. So here's one of the first things you should know. Your journey in animation will not be easy. It shouldn't be. It should be hard. It should be a struggle because you should want it that badly. But the one thing you need to remember is that it is absolutely worth it. It is absolutely worth it. There is nothing better than being able to do for your career what it is that you love, right? Are there days that are very hard? Absolutely. You can work as many as 80 hours a week, sometimes more, right? My friend Fraser McLean down here knows that well. So, this is how much we love this job. And with it, you're going to encounter tough personalities. You're going to encounter people that you may not ever work with again or may not want to work with again, and that's okay. Because no matter what, this is still your journey to take. Another thing to keep in mind, be kind to those that you work with. And here's the reason. This is one of the first lessons I learned, one of the first consejos that was given to me when I started on Cats Don't Dance. Whatever you do, do not step on or malign the people that work with you, especially those that work below you. Because that production assistant, 2 years later, could end up being your producer, could end up being your boss, right? And there's nothing wrong with trying to be kind and working with the people that you spend so much time with. More often than not, those people are more your family than the people that you see back home because you spend so much time with them. So that's one thing. Stay versatile. You'll notice, hopefully from what I showed you, that I was pivoting constantly. I went from cleanup animation to rough animation to character design to story supervisor and now direction. The reason for that, in large part, was because I managed to stay versatile. I managed to be able to say, you know what, I can do that, or I can at least try to do that. There are some of you that might think, oh, but I need to dedicate myself to one thing. Yes, to a degree, but be willing to change when you need to change. Be willing to change when you want to change, and that will carry you far. Another thing to think about is to knock on doors, network, talk to those around you. Be willing to knock on a supervisor's door, ask them questions, learn from them. Don't just hide at your desk. Don't just sit behind your computer at home with an occasional Zoom call. Talk to people. Talk to people, learn from them, embrace what it is that they have to tell you. Even if it's wrong information, at least you'll learn that along the way. Network. There are too many people that I've worked with that feel like, oh, no, I don't want to go knock on someone's door because it feels like I'm kissing their butt. That's not true. That's not true. No one is going to give you a position that you don't deserve and that you haven't worked hard for, because ultimately they don't want that reputation either. Another thing, find a mentor and a champion. More often than not, that is not the same person, because there is a difference. There's the champion that will always be there to say to someone else, you know what, Arturo's great, Melissa's great, Juan is great, hire them. They'll be there to tell people how great you are, and that's great. That's a champion. A mentor will help you learn what they have learned. Will bring you up with them. So more often than not, that is not the same person. So you want to try to find those two people and embrace that. And you will also find that those mentors will change from one production to the next, from one studio to the next. Oh, let's see. Get out of your shell. And this touches a little bit on what it was I was talking about earlier. We as artists, for the most part, tend to be introverts. If you want to direct, if you want to be a story artist, if you want to be a successful animator, get out of your shell. Be comfortable with who you are and who you're talking to, and ask questions and take advice and do all of those things. Don't silo yourself. Another thing to keep in mind, animation is full of really nice people. So you may run into an occasional jerk or two, but for the most part, animation is full of nice people, because we work on cartoons all day long. How could we not be nice? Now, last thing, learn from the leaders around you. learn what it is to be a good leader. And speaking about leaders, whether you are currently a leader or you want to be, I've had very good ones and very bad ones. And more often than not, I have learned more from the bad leaders than from the good leaders. I've learned what not to do. I have learned what not to say to people. And that helps in a really, really big way. Because what you'll find is if you are good to the people around you, those that work with you, which is another thing, a good leader will say that the people that work with them don't work for them, they work with them. It is a team effort. This is a job of collaboration, and the more collaborative people are, the better. But you do want to learn from them. So again, remember that the people that work with you, not for you. When you critique someone's work, someone that works with you, try to start with something good. Try to start with something positive. Look for the positive in their work. It's not hard to do. And then you can go into the criticism. And when you go into the criticism, do it from a place of learning. Do it from a place where you are helping that person grow, not just bringing them down. Remember that you were once in their shoes. And remember what that feeling was like when you had a bad leader and they treated you like crap. If you keep that in mind, it'll make you a better leader. Another thing to do, be a mentor. Be a mentor and foster mentorship. With Cat in the Hat, Erica and I, from the very beginning, have had a very clear goal. We have said early on, we have a no assholes clause. There are lots of great artists out there, and a lot of them are really bad people. A lot of them can have bad personalities. We don't want to work with them. We want to work with people that are not only good, but that are good people, and that are kind and good to those around them, that are willing to take their information, their experience, their expertise, and share it with those on the crew that haven't reached that yet. So we have said early on that we want to make sure that our crew is made up of a balance of very experienced artists and artists that are just starting out, so that they can bring them up with them. Because it is as much a learning experience for the leaders as it is for those that they are mentoring. Remember the importance of managing up and down. It's not just about managing the people that work with you. It's about managing the expectations and the relationships of the executives that work above you. It's a specific way of talking. It's a specific way of dealing with them. You want those people above you to feel like the project is in good hands. You want to reassure them that they have not made a mistake. Embrace their notes, because one thing that you'll find is even a note that doesn't make sense, even a note that might seem dumb, there's always the note behind the note. Try to figure out what that is and work with those executives that you're dealing with. Not just the executives, but the leadership within the production that you're working with, right? You want to make sure that, again, a good leader is someone that can work in both directions. So, there you have it. I'm sure there's a lot more that I've dealt with and had to deal with that maybe we didn't cover. Hopefully there are questions in the audience from those of you that might have them, and we can start now.
Thank you. Hola, hola. Bueno. Ya se escucha. Pues más que nada, quiero decirte que para todos nosotros somos muy felices por todo lo que han hecho. Nos han dejado infancia, niñez, lágrimas. Nos han desarrollado como nuestra motivación y como somos. Yo veo sus películas y a veces me pongo a chillar y me pongo a escribir historias. Y yo sé que algún día voy a llegar y voy a hacer algo como ustedes para dejarle a las nuevas generaciones hermosas animaciones que ustedes nos han dejado. Y por favor les pido un fuerte aplauso para todos ellos, porque son unas grandes personas. Y la pregunta que quiero hacerte, que luego me pasa mucho, es de que escribo guiones, longlines, sinopsis, me pongo como a tratar de hacer esos personajes, pero luego me da miedo. He intentado, como amigos que me encanta su arte, que digo, esto lo veo como para el arte de este chico, porque es apoyarnos entre todos en la animación y tratar de hacer algo de chido. Y no sé cómo, me da miedo de que a la persona que le pases eso tuyo te lo llegue a robar o algo así, ¿qué consejo me darías tú que ya tienes muchos años en esa industria de poder sacar como tus proyectos adelante sin ese miedo?
Wow. Conozco ese miedo. Lo conozco bien. So I'm going to continue in English. It's a fear that is, sometimes it's unfounded, and I get it. I do. The reality is that most people will not take your ideas. They might, but at the end of the day, it is still your story to tell. And that's okay, because the reality is that there are so many stories that really do kind of mirror each other. I have one right now that thankfully I'm working with Gaumont Animation from France, and then they have been absolutely amazing, there's a part of that story that has a very Romeo and Juliet quality. Does that mean that I stole something from Romeo and Juliet, from Shakespeare? No, not at all. It's just that I am finding my own way to tell that story. So if someone finds something in the story that you're telling that they latch on to, even if it seems like they're taking it, it might only be a small part. It doesn't matter. It is still your story to tell. You will still have that there. Don't let that cripple you, because that's what can happen. It can cripple you. It can get you to a point where you don't want to share it and you don't do anything with it, and that would be the biggest mistake. Yeah. De nada.
Here. Hola. Hola. Ya. Hi. ¿En español o en inglés? ¿Español? De todos los proyectos en los que has trabajado, ¿cuál ha sido tu favorito, así personalmente, el con el que tú te sientes más conectado?
El momento con Tinkerbell y Lizzie. Ese. Por varias razones. If you remember the part where Lizzie goes over and she takes the drawings off of her pegboard, almost all of those drawings were made by my little nieces. Yeah, it's the most personal to me because it is that moment in E.T. It's why that movie has resonated with me so much, because I'm a little kid at heart. The movies that mean the most to me are the ones where I can see myself in that character. And because I am a little kid at heart, I was Elliot's age when I saw that movie for the first time. I was 9 years old, sitting in the audience thinking, oh my God, I wish I had an alien. And it's so beautifully done. And there are people that criticize Spielberg for the saccharine quality of that movie. I don't mind it at all. There's so much artistry in it. The fact that he brought the camera down and kept it down to Elliot's level is brilliant storytelling. The fact that you don't see any adult heads until after they get really bad, until they show the evil side of being an adult, that's brilliant. The only adult that you see, full body, is Mom, because Mom was so important to Elliot. I learned so much from that movie about storytelling, and to be able to put that into that moment with Tinkerbell and Lizzie was such a gift.
Hello. First than anything, thank you for all the great speech and showing us everything.
You're welcome.
It's super inspiring, I think, more than anything. Actually, what I would like to ask or see, if you have any tidbits, you already have worked like for such a long journey. It seems, and it even seems like it's just beginning still, right? Like there's so many things just coming on the horizon. So one question for people that it's maybe not beginning, but in the middle of the same path will be, how do you do or how do you handle when things don't seem that good? Because in this, like in anything, sometimes you have like amazing moments, amazing production, themes, people around you that make you, bring the better you, and sometimes there are places and times where you don't see the point to it, right? Like it's very hard, sometimes it's even very difficult to try to reignite what used to bring you happiness and used to bring you your creativity in the action. So what kind of tip, or maybe what kind of thing helps you through that process? Because 25 years, I imagine not everything was rose and sunshines.
No, those are very good questions, because you have to find inspiration with everything around you, because you're right, there are going to be disappointments. not just along the road with the production, but along the road with people that you work with. There are a couple of things to do. One is to make sure that you have other projects that you're working on, so that you have something to come home to that can kind of set the other things aside and remind yourself that what you're doing is important to you, right? And you're going to run into difficult personalities. So the thing with that to do is to try to find a way to work with that personality, try to find a way to help them see that they have a part in this to play, and that their collaboration is going to lift everyone up. That's one of the biggest things about this business is collaboration. It is so vitally important. There are so many studios that will silo the different departments, that will keep them separate from one another. They will keep production separate from one another. That is a huge mistake. If I could give any advice to an executive right now, it would be have your productions talk to one another. Have the directors communicate with one another and share to make their own work better. Make sure that the departments within the production are communicating with one another. Our visual development department, our visual development artists and our story artists, they don't work separately. They work together. At every one of our meetings, those viz dev artists are with the story artists because we believe firmly that story informs art and art informs story. And that's the only way it'll make the production better. And that goes across the board for every department afterward. The more collaborative they are, the better. The other thing about it, like I said, there will be really difficult moments. When E1 killed that project, we had a crew of about 24, almost 30 people. I had to do the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my career. I had to pull all of them into one room. Human resources wanted to do it. I said no. I was their leader, it was my job to do, and I had to sit them down and tell them that they only had one more week left of employment. The hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I am not ashamed to admit that I was in tears because they are family to me. They still are. Those are people that I worked with before. Those are people that I trust. Those are people that I brought in. Those are people that I continue to work with now on Cat in the Hat. So you have to find the positive things that come out of this stuff. And that's an example of that. That project may have gone away, but I have a better one now and I was able to bring them along with me.
Aquí. Hola.
Ah, there you go.
Bueno, mi pregunta era, mencionaste obviamente muchas veces que muchos proyectos se cancelan, no se concluyen, X, ¿no? No llegan al final. Entonces, obviamente uno quiere dar todo de sí en cada uno de sus proyectos. Entonces, tanto emocionalmente como creativamente, ¿cómo manejas esto? ¿Cómo lo balanceas? ¿No? De que en cada trabajo dar lo mejor, sabiendo que el trabajo de un año puede ser reducido a nada en segundos. Gracias.
Oh. No es fácil. No es fácil. Para mí, lo más importante es el apoyo de mi esposa. We've been married for 25 years. Next month. And if it weren't for her, I don't know that I could do it. I have someone to come home to that understands what I've gone through, that knows my heartache, that knows when things go away, that when I come home angry, when I come home frustrated, I try not to show it at work. But unfortunately, it means that I come home and I show it there. And it's hard because she shoulders that weight. And I have to remember sometimes that I can't just come home and unload on her. But I will say, though, that without her help, without her support, I don't know that I could go through those things. And even if it's not a spouse, a partner, if it's parents, a sibling, a friend, find someone that can be that support for you, right? And a true friend will be okay shouldering some of that weight because they know that you'll do the same for them also. So it does help. It does help because it isn't easy.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give us any advice on finding our voice?
Finding voices. Okay. So I'm presuming you're saying voices for a character?
More like your voice as an artist or...
Oh, my voice as an artist. Wow, that's more deep. Okay, so here's the thing. Thankfully, I'm at a point in my career where I can have a voice, right? Where I have something to say and I can say it. And that's what's so nice about working with my partner, Erica, is that she and I have very similar sensibilities. We rarely disagree on anything. But she has given me that opportunity to have that voice. So this is when it comes to personal projects. Whatever you're working on, try to put the most personal parts of that project, of your life, into that project. The more personal it is for you, the more authentic it will feel, and the more people will relate to it. You know, the story, although I can't share much of it, not any of it, for Speedy Gonzalez, it is about family. And so a lot of what happens for our character in that movie is based on my experiences with my family, with my parents, with my siblings. It's not about a mouse, it's not about the fastest mouse in Mexico, it's about a mouse that has a family and what happens in that family and how they accept him and his place in that family. And so try to infuse as much as you can into a project, even if it's a story that comes to you from someone else. There are ways to put your personal experiences into that project. That's how you find your voice.
Vamos a hacer dos últimas preguntas.
Okay.
Well, my question is, what do need? I am very, very nervous. Sorry.
Okay.
What do you need to be a part of the motivation to do that movie? Bueno, ¿qué necesitas si te toca como por ejemplo de director de alguna película y así? ¿Qué necesitas aparte de motivación así? ¿Cuáles serían los elementos como digamos importantes para hacer eso?
Si escuché bien, la pregunta fue, ¿qué se necesita para ser un director?
Básicamente, perdón.
Oh, wow. I think the important thing about there's a difference. You can be a director, but then there's the difference of being a good director or a bad director. I think a good director, to be a good director, you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to be observant. You have to watch the things around you. I'll give you an example. I had the good fortune of being able to be in different departments and learn lots of different things, but there are things that I don't know. I don't really know Maya. I know the terminology, but I don't know how to use it. So I trust the person that is doing that part of the job because I listen, because I'm open to listening to that person and embracing that. My directing partner, Erica, she is a writer by trade. This is her first directing job. But you would never be able to tell because she's so good at it, because she listens. She listens and she tries to understand and she's willing to embrace new things. And she's brilliant because of it. So I think she was meant to be a director years and years ago. It's kind of ridiculous to me that this is her first time, because she's so good. And that's what it is that she's so good about listening and embracing things and being open to learning. So I think those things in combination make a good director.
Well, hi. First of all, I want to thank you because all the that you said were really good. And my question is more, for you as an artist, what is the next path that you want to follow? I mean, because this all 28 years that you've been working, I mean, you learned so many. So what are the things that you are missing or that you want to still learn and to put on practice?
Good question. So this is a part that I didn't get a chance to share just yet. The part that's still missing for me is what's now starting to come to fruition. It's the part that's now starting to come true. And that is my project with Gaumont, because that one is very personal to me. It is, without giving too much away because I can't, it is very much about the relationship with my grandmother. And it is set in Mexico, and it is tied to a very well-known legend and in a beautiful, well-known city. And it is my opportunity to pay honor, to pay homage to my culture, to my traditions, to the traditions that my grandmother shared with me, my abuelita Becky. So.
Art, muchísimas gracias por esta magnífica... Aquí estoy.
No, gracias a ustedes. No se imaginan lo emocionante que es para mí estar con ustedes. This has been a huge opportunity, and I can't thank all of you enough for this.
Muchas gracias por venir, por escuchar esta magnífica clase. Las salidas por aquí atrás, por la puerta de acá atrás. Los esperamos para la siguiente conferencia y muchas gracias por venir.